Welcome to GoWP's Digital Agency Podcast. I'm Mariah, Director of Creative Services.
And I'm Joanne. I am GoWP's Marketing Manager. And before we welcome our guests, I would like to say a few words about GoWP in case anyone listening is new here, isn't familiar with us and our WordPress services. I just want to get this out of the way really quick. So at GoWP, our teams create happiness for digital agencies, and we help them become more profitable, whether it's joining in our incredibly valuable weekly calls, our happiness hour calls, or if you're looking for ways to grow your team with a dedicated developer, a copywriter, a designer, we got you covered. We also offer services like case studies, blogging, website maintenance, content edits, and page builds that you can completely outsource to our team or white label them as a new revenue source for your agency.
What? Well, Joanne, why don't you tell the people how, if they are interested agency owners and solopreneurs, how they can find out more about GoWP?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find anything you need from us on GoWP.com or our social media channels. So on Twitter, we're GoWP Support, and GoWP everywhere else. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, get updates, what's going on with our weekly happiness hours.
Ah, yes. I'm really excited, truly excited to welcome and chat with our guest today because he's so fun and he's knowledgeable and he's so approachable. The man to whom I'm referring is none other than Mr. Joe Casabona. We'll explain the Good House in a moment. He's the host of podcasts like How I Built It, Ship Your Podcast, WP Review, WordPress Review, and other shows. He is also a college instructor and the creator of Creator Courses. This is a series of courses that instruct small business owners and freelancers the skills and routes to creating and monetizing their content, building online courses, and even creating websites without code. All very valuable tools. Welcome, Joe Casabona.
Welcome, Joe.
How are you?
Thank you both very much. What a great introduction. I am doing very well. I'm happy to be here to chat. This is nice because usually we're in a group call with like a dozen or so other people. So this is nice to have some one-on-one time.
Yeah. It's like a conference call.
Right,
yes.
right.
Remember those? Like, hold on, let me get the other person in the line.
The party line. Well, thank you for accepting our invitation on that happiness hour call. I slid into your DMs, as the kids say, and made the invitation to come on. You were kind and not freaked out by me sliding into said DM and accepting the invitation. So
well, he was putting eyes on the chat. I remember that because we were talking about the podcast, and he was like, wait, what's going on? So I was
that's right. You mentioned looking for guests, and I was like, I like the eyes emoji, right? When I'm looking, I'm like, I see that. I'm interested.
I see you.
I won't invite myself onto anybody's podcast, but I'm happy to be invited. I tell people I am happy to be your first guest because I know getting that first guest could be hard, and most people are going to be nervous for their first podcast episode, and I want to help people make it as easy as possible for them.
Oh, thank
you.
So
you heard it first here. Joe Casabona is open to be the first guest in your podcast. So if you're starting a podcast after you learn how to start a podcast with this course, get him on the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
One-stop shop here. See, it's all about getting you on everyone's podcast for the first guest.
Machine.
Love it.
Just keeps on going.
So, for anyone listening or watching on YouTube, I think I speak for both Joanne and myself. We are not faking the joy. Like you are, we've had wonderful guests, of course, everyone we invite. We don't invite anyone who's not wonderful, but you are especially just a great guy, and a great podcaster in your own right. I feel like, we should be bowing down to you, but yeah, we're both happy to have you here, Joe. One of the first things I wanted to talk about today is not even really a question at all. It's something that you brought up on one of our weekly happiness hour calls. Your name, it's a beautiful name, Joe Casabona. You are of Italian descent, and tell the listeners what Casabona translates into.
Yes, Casabona translates from Italian into good house. And yeah, I am of Italian descent on both sides. So I am 100% Italian American, which is something I feel like fewer people can say, right? They're like 100% of a certain descent. I always said that I would marry an Italian girl to keep that going. And I married an Irish girl because she's wonderful. And, now I can say my kids are like Frank Sinatra, right? Because he was like half Italian, half Irish. But yeah, Casabona translates into good house. And everywhere. So anytime I go into like another Italian establishment and I introduce myself, they'll always give me like that knowing look. They'll be like, Casabona, good house, right? And they would do it to me in Italy too. We honeymooned in Italy and they would ask me, oh, like capisce l'italiano, right? Which, do you understand Italian? And I would say, io capisco un po' l'italiano. And then they'd be very disappointed that I don't speak, that I'm not fluent in Italian. We're a very proud people. So yeah, but it's a great tidbit. I really like that because, good house is a nice thing to have.
I mean, it's a nice tradition to pass along the family line and to continue. Yeah. And I totally feel you. My lineage, my father is Nigerian, of the Yoruba ethnicity, the Yoruba tribe, and my mother is African American. So a lot of different mixes in there. And then my great grandmother was German. Can you tell from my hair color? But yeah, no, I love meaning. Not that every culture doesn't have meanings in the names, but like Orija, my last name in Yoruba, it means loosely translated, it's the head is stronger than any problem. And so I don't tend to get too overwhelmed and like, look at you, shocked. I know, shocked. And
I love
that's so cool. We're talking about my last name. Your last name is so much cooler. That's like a word. That's words to live by. That's
it's a heavy burden actually, because whenever I do feel like, oh man, I got a lot going on, I feel like my great grandfather looking down at me. What is your name? Your name is Orija.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, you're right. Great grandfather to the third power. You're right. I'm stronger than any problem facing me. No, but I think it's really beautiful. And, again, I mean, good house. You have a lot to live up to as well.
I do. I do. That's like my Joseph, depending on the language, translates into a bunch of things. It could translate into like warrior or enlightened. So I'm like, great. I'm like enlightened warrior of a good house. That's like a lot of pressure. A
lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But the names matter. In fact, speaking of names, just a few weeks ago, this podcast was called Niche Agency Owner Podcast, and we are now Digital Agency Owner. Names matter. I mean, names matter.
Names matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm not even going to go into my last name. It's Torres, means towers. And it's usually an opening for like people who see me in person. They're like, Torres, because you're tall.
I love the way you said it though. Love the way you said it though.
Torres. Yeah, I roll my R's. I'm Dominican. I must. If not, they're like, what happened to you? You moved to the States and now who are you?
They were all washed out.
But like speaking of language and heritage, someone called you that you were born a teacher. Are you teaching your kids Italian so they don't get flustered when they go to Italy and hopefully and ask for, I don't know, cacio pepe in the wrong way?
I've been trying. I've been teaching my daughter the Italian words that I know, and then I've been doing Babbel to try to learn Italian myself. I have tried to do this with each child, right? Because I've read that the language center is developing the best between like I think 4 and 10 months. And which is wild, right? And so I was like, if I speak enough Italian while before my baby turns a year, then they'll be able to pick it up more quickly. Of course, they can still pick up language pretty quickly up until I think it's like 10 or something like that. So I still have like 6 years, but clock reset on that.
But like speaking of teachers and teaching your kids, you teach college courses. So you're the host of instructional podcasts and also you have LinkedIn courses. Can you talk a little bit about your love or your knack for teaching and how it originated and what your goal is to teach your students and for creating programs? This is like 3 questions in one.
All right. Well, I will say I was not always good at teaching. The first teaching experience I remember was showing my mom how to use a computer. And I was like, just right click. And she was like, what? So she moved her cursor to the right side of the screen and clicked. And I was like, no, right click. And she's like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, just right click, which is not shouting the same words at people is not very effective as a teaching strategy. But I got better because I was a freelance web developer from the time I was 14. And so throughout, it was very like, I like to say it was divine intervention because my church was like, we need a website. Can you make one? And I was like, nah. And they were like, we'll pay you. And I was like, yeah. So that was my first gig was a paid gig, but I continued to do that because it was so fun. It was like I got to flex my creative side and my logical side. And I loved it. And so I kept doing it. And as I was training people, right, because we moved from in the early 2000s, just like kind of static pages to content management sites where the client can update their own site. And so I would train the clients. And for a long time, my clients would sit down with me and say, I'm really sorry, I'm really bad at this. And I would always say, that's why I'm here to show you. If everybody knew what I knew, I'd be out of a job. And so I developed that we'll say empathy for the student or for the learner at that point. And then when I went to grad school, I didn't want to pay for grad school. So I applied for a teaching assistantship and I got it. And so I got to teach a 1-credit class 3 or 4 times a week. And I thought that was so fun. And when I graduated, I told the computer science department, when you have an opening for an adjunct professor, let me know. And they're like, we have an opening. And so I got to teach there, but it was great. I learned as much. This is like so cliche. I learned as much from my students as they learned from me, right? Because by the time I started teaching, I was 10 years into a web design, web development, computer career. And so you forget what you didn't know, right? So those students reminded me, right? One time I was trying to explain to them like the difference between a page and a post in WordPress. And one of my students just raised her hand and said, I have no idea what any of that means. And I was like, great, I will rephrase this and explain it to you in non-jargony terms. And so when you ask what my goal is for my students and the programs I create, I'll use the terminology that I stole from Troy Dean, which is get my students from zero to win. And he says that he does that over the entirety of the course, as well as each individual lesson. So I would call it learn by doing. I don't just want to talk at somebody and then expect them to understand, right? Because that's like my experience with math class is like teacher would explain it. And then I'm like, I totally get it. And then I would do the homework and I'm like, I don't even remotely get this. I want them to.
This is supposed to be logical.
Exactly. I felt quick sidebar. I dropped out of calc. I withdrew from calc. And I felt so bad because my teacher, Dr. Ferzola, was A, really good, B, a Yankee fan. So like we were buddies. And I legit said, it's not you, it's me when I withdrew from this class. I was like, I'm really sorry. It's not you, it's me. But so when I approach my classes, there's always some goal for each lesson. And I want my students to have something tangible by the end of the course. So by the end of this course, you will have a podcast in Apple Podcasts, or by the end of this course, you will have a website that is fully using full site editing. And that helps students work along with each lesson. And then when they get stuck, they can ask while it's fresh. And then I can adjust the lesson or explain it in a different way.
Yeah. And that way they can also move along with their own content personality, their own brand, their own agency. They don't feel like they have to abide, like do exactly just like a copy paste of exactly what you did. So that I think that it has a lot of value for the people who are doing those courses. Like, it's not like, oh, you're going to do the same thing I did. No, it's no. This is more of a framework for you to actually apply to your business. And I think that's such a good approach. Useful approach in terms of good. Trying to reframe my mind from saying good or bad, because everything is relative, right? Yeah. So in this context, it's a useful approach. It's tangible in terms of how you can apply it to your business.
Yeah. Thank you. And I agree. And especially with when you're selling courses, right? Because like college, it's kind of a captive audience. Most of the time they have to take the course usually. But if people are buying a course that you're selling, most people buy courses aspirationally. Course completion rates are abysmal. Like 10% of people who buy courses complete them. I am absolutely guilty of this. And so when you are showing, first of all, when you break each lesson up into a 0 to win, now they can take the course over time when they want to, right? This is called just-in-time learning. I need to learn how to do this thing. This lesson from this course I bought will show me how to do it. So I'm going to watch this video and then move on to the thing I'm trying to do. But if they are taking the whole course and they're doing something along the way, now they're encouraged to finish, right? Because it's like that fallacy of sunk cost a little bit, but it's also people want to complete the things they start. So if we start off and say, okay, install a WordPress site on local, and here's how to do that. All right, now you have a thing that you can work from, right? Now we're going to install this theme or record your first episode of your podcast. Great. Now I have something tangible.
Real quick, can you just speak to the fallacy of sunk cost?
Totally. Yeah. The fallacy of sunk cost is when somebody, I don't think I used it correctly as I was explaining it, but it's the idea that you've spent so much time on something that you're going to finish it no matter what, right? So in poker, let's say if you're not familiar with Texas Hold'em, you get 2 cards and then you make a bet, right? So let's say I bet $1. All right. Then the dealer flips over 3 cards. So then I look at the cards in my hand and the cards that he just turned over. And now I make another. Then comes the 4th card. This is called the turn card. I look at my cards. Somebody bets. I make another bet. Now the river comes and I know the river is the last card. Sorry. The 5th card comes. So I have 7 cards and I need to make the best 5 card hand. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way I can win this hand. And the person I'm playing against raises me $100. Well, I'm already in it for $50, so I might as well just see it through. That's the fallacy of the sunk cost, right? Or if we're relating it to digital agency owners, right? You're working on a plugin or you're working on a proposal, and you've spent 10 hours on this proposal, and you're like, this is terrible. The client's never going to go for it. And even if they do go for it, it's not going to be good for my business, but I've already spent 10 hours on it. So now I'm going to send it to the client. And if they accept it, well, they've accepted it. So now I'm in it. That's the fallacy of the sunk cost. You should cut your losses, but people like to complete the things they start.
I was going to say, you said cut your losses. I was thinking you do need to know when to hold them, Joe, when to fold them.
And when to fold them. That's exactly right.
And when the dealing's done. I think, your parents wisely named you Joseph, because I think you just demonstrated for everyone why you are such an effective instructor, such a great teacher, and inspiring small business leaders and your students every day. It's so awesome to hear you speak on that. One of the other elements of your great teaching is the community that you build into your courses and your creative courses. You place a really high emphasis on community. And I was wondering if you could talk about your own experience in different communities over your 20 years as a developer, as a course creator and small business owner. And what is the value? Like, why do you emphasize students engage in the community and that you have that strong community to offer?
Yeah, I'm an extrovert. I don't know if you can tell. I'm an extrovert. And I was heavily involved in community. I mean, I guess, I shouldn't say everybody, but I was certainly involved in communities from a young age. My dad coached my first t-ball team and made sure I was involved in soccer. And then I joined drama club, like my teacher, shout out Miss McCullough, who I think is now Sister Mary. Sister Mary, she saw in me the ability to act and be on stage and be in front of people. And she made sure I joined drama club, which I did from 2nd grade all through 12th grade. And so, yeah, it was so much. I missed it. This is why I podcast. People ask why I podcast. It's because I miss drama club. But those communities brought out the best in me, right? And the WordPress community, when I first started, the WordPress community gave me my first speaking gig. And now I mean, I knew from drama club that I would love speaking probably, but I didn't have that confidence. I didn't think, oh, I can get on stage and show a complete group of strangers who isn't a captive audience what I know. And now it's one of my favorite things to do. And so being parts of communities have made me better, and they're so important. I joined the marketing committee for my daughter's school last night. She goes to a small well, I don't know if it's small, but a Catholic school, St. Joe's. And so they don't have a marketing budget, so they need a marketing committee, and they need somebody who knows websites. And that first meeting, I was so excited when I left. It was great to be interacting with people again. And so communities show you that you're not alone, I think, because this is something that I was feeling throughout the pandemic, and I'm not from the area I live. This is my wife's hometown, so I don't have a lot of friends here. And last night I went to this committee meeting of 6 people, and I felt instantly like I was part of something. And so when my students are taking an online course at home, I don't want them to feel like they're alone. You know, oh, I'm having trouble submitting this to Apple Podcasts. Yes, Apple Podcasts makes it seem impossible. And so you can ask a question in my community and other people will answer. And I think that's the when you're learning, it's better to learn together, and it's better to go together. And the community helps that. It lets people know that they're not the only person taking this course, and if they get stuck, they only have me. They have other people who are at the same stage as them, or they can figure it out together.
Yeah. And I think it's so important as well to reiterate that you're not alone, and this problem has most likely already happened to someone, and it's not in your head because it's in those times where you're frustrated and you're just like, I don't know what it is. It's just not working. It's a me problem. It's not you, it's me. Going somewhere where you can ask in total confidence and you know that like no one's gonna like make fun of you or anything like that, because that's everyone's like their worst fear, right? Of saying like, oh, or you know, you're not good enough or anything. Not knowing that all of those things are like stay at the door when you're in those communities is so important, and I think they're so valuable. And that's really what I love, like as an outsider coming into the WordPress community only for a year now. I found that kind of validation in our happiness hours at class calls, I was going to say classes, and the agency owners group, because I get to connect with a lot of agency owners who may be frustrated about something or just want to celebrate like a really good win, you know, even if like things like, you know, I just made my first 6-figure deal. Like that's, and being able to support people and be there for them. It feels, you know, it's kind of like, for me, it's like an anxiety reliever, because like when you don't know what to do, like helping others is so helpful as well.
And
does everyone feel that?
No, absolutely. And I'll add on to that, since we're talking about, you know, content and creativity, creating content. I'm so ashamed that I've forgotten his last name. One of the writers he worked with Norman Lear, a great, you know, producer of television, revolutionized television. First name is Jerry, last name, I've totally lost it. But anyway, he was a writer for The Jeffersons, The Golden Girls, and several other shows. And I was in a writing course with him. And that's one of the things he said about the value and almost the sacredness of the writing, of the writer's room. It has to be a safe place to fail and explore and to ask, is this anything? And I think that you don't have to be a Hollywood writer for that to be applicable to the work that you do in anything, whether it's creating contents or developing new sites or a podcast. You know, is this anything? And having that safe response from others is so important. Otherwise, you've killed all creativity.
Yeah.
So
and what's the point of that?
Yeah. What is the point of that?
There's no bad ideas in brainstorming, right? It's funny you said, is this anything? Because isn't that also the name of Seinfeld's new book? It's called This Is Anything.
Really?
Anything? Are you thinking of Jerry Lewis?
No.
Okay.
I can find it while we're talking. No, it's he's an awesome guy, but I can't recall his last name.
Which is very interesting, because I go to Emily all the time with like half baked ideas. Like, is this something? Am I like dreaming, like daydreaming, like what is that? And she's like, wait, no, yes, this is definitely, hold on, like let me take, because you never know who's going to take something and help you run with it, or who you can sell an idea to based on like a small nugget of, or a small seed of something that can be, you know. And I think that's just so powerful in itself.
One more point on that is I would also try to embody that when I was on the other side, right? So like if I was in a classroom and the teacher asked if there were any questions and I had questions, I would always ask them, right? I would always ask them because I know I'm probably not the only person. And even if I am, I'm not like ashamed that I don't know something. I'm going to ask. And I carried that professionally too. When I left my last full-time job, my employees, my coworkers messaged me and they're like, so who's going to ask all the hard questions like during the company meetings? I'm like, any of you, it was in you all along. Like if you have these questions, just ask them.
And that's your legacy, Joe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just I asked like hard, like we were having trouble making payroll and we had hired somebody and I was like, so are we telling this new hire that we're having trouble making payroll? And like people like, I can't believe you asked that. And I'm like, I would want to know that. So I'm never going to be afraid to ask a question.
Yeah. As someone who has been called obtuse and awkward for asking hard questions. Yeah. There was an unveiling of the new branding of a previous company I was, and everyone was like, all of the stakeholders were called to the podium and they were talking about, you know, how great the branding reflected the new values of the company, all of these things. And they were all men. And everyone in the audience, we were all like whispering, like, seriously, like not even, we have product designers who are women. There are two, but they are there. And they were asking for questions. They're like, really? No one's going to ask any questions? And I'm like, I was terrified to ask, but I was like, were there any women involved in this decision making? And everyone in the audience, you know, was like, yeah, you know, everyone like applauding, clamoring, all of these things. But the whole podium, they were just like stark faced. And of course, because I put all of these, you know, executives and you know, directors and VPs into a very uncomfortable position in the front, in front of the whole company. And, you know, my point with this is that it's really hard to ask these type of questions, but you never know who's going to be seen and who's going to see that and be able to validate either their story, their thoughts with what you've said. So
right, the person that you asked the question to might have not liked the question, but your peers appreciated it and maybe were emboldened by it, right? And I think that, so like if I am somebody who maybe it seems like I complain on Twitter a lot. I've been trying hard not to, but I will not complain unless I have complained to the appropriate people and I have a suggestion, right? I'm not just going to bring up problems without solutions, right? That's my brother's managing style too. He works at Disney. And so when a cast member comes to him and has a complaint, he's like, what is your proposed solution? And they're like, I don't know. And he's like, well, come back to me with a proposed solution. So you want to empower people, whether it's your peers, whether it's your students, and getting them to ask questions and open up and talk about their struggles. That's how they're going to learn and grow, I think. This went a lot deeper than I expected it to.
It did.
That's what we're all about here. And you
went there.
You mentioned Disney, and I was thinking, should we jump ahead to Disney? Maybe we'll come back to Disney because we do want to talk about Disney. But I think
a little teaser.
Stay tuned, friends.
Yeah.
But
Easter egg.
This is a great place to pivot because we're talking about information and how information and ideas are shared in our these contemporary times, and, you know, diversity and all of that. And, you know, when you talk about not being afraid to ask a question, we look back in history all the time at moments of tragedy and loss. Oftentimes those cataclysmic moments weren't unforeseen. Somebody at the table thought something's wrong with this scenario, but they didn't speak up. And then in retrospect, it's like, why didn't we connect the dots? I mean, we can look at so many events, 9/11, the assassination of so many of our leaders. And it's like, somebody knew something was off, but didn't speak up. But I want to look back to the past, but not something less tragic than an assassination of a leader. Let's talk about one of the people you like, Mr. Bill Gates. We're going to go back in the Wayback Machine to last century, to about 1996. And that phrase, content is king, is a phrase that a lot of us were familiar with. And I did some digging. I wasn't familiar with the origin or who first coined the phrase. Turns out it was Mr. William Gates. He wrote an essay back in the day, and I'll just read out some main points of the essay he wrote. Some of those ideas were that content is where much of the real money will be made on the internet, just as it was in broadcasting. He said content will go far beyond software news. No company, this really stuck out to me, no company is too small to participate in content creation. And content creation will ultimately sweep the world as communication costs come down and a critical mass of localized content becomes available in different countries. For the internet to thrive, content providers must be paid for their work. Great, we're talking about content and monetization today. Gates also said often their efforts are based on passion and on the belief that over time, someone will figure out how to get revenue. We're there. we're where Bill, because we're on a first name basis, what he predicted. He thought we were in 1996, he thought we were just a year away from having the processes in place for content to be monetized. So should we all just sit back and say, yep, Bill was right. Content is still king. And small businesses can be a part of the game, considering that everybody, once upon a time, sorry, I'm making this, find the question in this monologue, but once upon a time, the marketing department, they were responsible for creating the content that earned revenue. But everybody's involved now. This podcast, we're creating, although kind of cheating, Joanne is marketing, but why not? All sorts of staff people have become the creators. So I guess my question for you in that diatribe is, was he right? I mean, what is the role? Where should small businesses, how should they be stepping into content in 2021 and beyond?
2022.
Yeah,
it's 2022 practically.
2022, yeah, gosh.
The 21st century, how about that? Will cover us for a while.
Perfect. I think that 1996, that's prescient, right? And the fact that prescient is the fact that Bill Gates was saying, it's no company is too small. Microsoft was already huge at this point, right? Like Windows 95 was out. They had that super awkward dance release party thing that's like a meme now. And so I can't agree with this enough, because Bill Gates is a mind unlike any other that we'll see. And he's very good at taking the long view on a lot of things. And so he looked in the past and he looked at what broadcasting did. And then he properly predicted that the internet would do the same thing. And it's easier than ever now for anybody to make money on the internet with their content, right? Patreon, when Patreon came along, any creator could sign up for a Patreon account and monetize one of the first bloggers who made money from their blog is Jason Kotke, one of the first micro bloggers, right? Kotke.org. He started taking money in like 1998, I think, or 2000, something like that, where it was a lot harder because like PayPal, gosh, was PayPal even
super
around?
sketchy? No, it was. I don't.
Yeah.
PayPal came around in 98. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like,
let me verify that real quick.
but like super early days, yeah, right.
Yeah,
Back when like the
98.
only people. Nice, nicely done.
98.
I really have met my match with pop cultural references, I guess.
Musk and was it Peter Thiel?
Yes, both like crazy rich guys now. But so I think that today it's easier than ever, right? You can like on Twitter be like, I want to have a newsletter, and Twitter will be like, okay, do you want to charge for it, right? And then you can put out your newsletter that way. Substack, Patreon, and this is. You don't have to build your own platform, right? I know in the WordPress space, people talk a lot about you need to own your own platform, and like it's like owning a house versus renting an apartment. When I rented an apartment, I didn't need to pay $10,000 to replace my HVAC. I could just live in the apartment, and if something broke, I would call the super. So
I think it's just also in addition to, and I hate to interrupt you, but it's just when you're on the platform thing, I agree with your point. And I just want to add to that is that now the way audiences are built, they're on platforms, and you have to have a very, very dedicated, very active community and community within your audience, that's very important to distinguish. Just because you have an audience of, like, let's say 10,000 people doesn't mean that they're part of the engaged community of 1,500. Right. They have to be very active and willing to migrate to different platforms. It's not the same as having 7 million followers on TikTok than having, I don't know, 20,000 people who buy from your Instagram store. So there are so many levels to this platform and audience and community. And I may be digressing, but it's all like the content is kind of like the hook, right? Yeah. And then it's your job to kind of like keep them fed rather than eating the fish, I guess. I don't know if that's a good analogy.
You made an excellent point, right? I wrote a blog post about this when Facebook went down back when it was just Facebook.
We all remember where we were.
Yeah, exactly. I got so much done that day. But, people, again, it was easy for people to be like, you got to own your own platform, right? Sure. If I want to go off and build a cabin in the woods away from everybody on unincorporated land so I don't have to pay taxes, but it's my house, I'm not going to expect anybody to come visit me because there's no roads, there's no infrastructure, there's no grocery store. So yeah, there is definitely a place and time for you to own your own platform, but don't dog not owning your platform or whatever, right? It's still, somebody today, as we record this, said, doesn't anybody write blog posts anymore because they were reading like Twitter threads? And I was like, yes, people are writing their blog posts on Twitter, where you get instant gratification because people are liking like every point you make. What platform allows people to like specific paragraph? I guess Medium lets you do that now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, exactly. So, and that's where your audience is, right? You don't have to be like, hey, go to my site. You just, here are my thoughts. Turn it into a blog post if you want, but bring the message to where your audience is.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you mentioned the Twitter thread thing, because there are some amazing marketers making a lot of great points within Twitter threads. But I'm so interested in the life cycle of a Twitter thread in terms of how do you take that and also distribute that and repurpose that content into different, maybe making a blog post is very valuable, but I'm also very interested in the life cycle of the Twitter thread, because it's exactly what you say. It's the instant gratification. Like, who doesn't want to go, like, what's more valuable, going viral and getting, 20,000 retweets, or having a blog post with a comment section off?
Right. And so a couple of things there, right? You make a really good point about life cycle, right? I had a guest on my podcast. Her name's Elizabeth Pamplone, and she dropped some crazy knowledge on me that was like, Facebook, post 30 minutes. Twitter, the life cycle of a tweet is 21 minutes. Meanwhile, Pinterest is like 151,000 hours. So Twitter thread, have a clear call to action at the end of it, right? This is what they recommend on the, it's Allie and another name that rhymes with Allie. Or
saying names.
Yeah, the deliverability podcast from ConvertKit. It's so good. And, they gave some tips on Twitter threads. It's like, you have a Twitter thread, have a clear call to action at the end to get people on your mailing list, right? But then you can also, you can take those tweets and turn them into a blog post. There are apps out there like getchirapp.com that lets you compose a Twitter thread. It'll break it up into a thread for you. So I will type long form thoughts in my writing app, paste it over into Chirp, have a Twitter thread, and then I can publish it to my blog too. So it's, you want to repurpose absolutely where you can, but you also, like we said, you want to be where your audience is.
Yeah. And we'll have everything we mentioned, we'll have that on the show notes, just for anyone who's wondering, who's like going back, like, what is it? Was it chirp? Can you repeat that? Chirp?
Yeah. I'm making notes to say, but it's Get Chirr, CHIRR app.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Can you automate the chirp?
Yeah. You can schedule threads, and a neat feature that they recently rolled out was you can drip out the threads now. So I can say, here's a thread, start it on this date, publish one tweet from the thread each day. So I don't know if you've been following my Tweet 100 posts, but they've been like threads on topics. Chirr is doing all of that for me.
That's really cool. Yeah. It's a super helpful tool for all content managers and community managers out there. So I'll take a note on that.
Yeah, big fan of it. And Poblar just recently rolled out. Poblar's like, I got a AppSumo lifetime deal. It's like the only one I use. And they recently rolled that out too, but their interface is a little bit more clunky because it's like you have to make a thread by starting a tweet and then adding comments to it because they want other platforms, where like Chirr is like, this is for tweet threads. We know what we're about. So it's there's a lot of value in that.
Do one thing and do it very, very well.
Yeah.
I don't know who said, someone important said that, but yeah, that really speaks to me.
Well, you said it today. So that's why people will quote you from here on out. So we have to circle back to Disney. You mentioned that your brother or your brother-in-law works for Disney.
My brother. Yeah, my youngest brother. My favorite brother is what I tell people. We're the same.
Does he give you Disney passes?
Yeah. My other brothers know.
He'd be my favorite too. Yeah.
They have to earn their keep in your heart. So you are, anyone who follows you online or who talks to you knows that, you're all about family, and they might even get a sense of your love of Disney. And I was wondering, was the love for Disney always there, or did the arrival of the children bring the Disney?
It was always there.
It was always there. It was always there.
Always there. We went for the first time in like 1989 when I was like 4, but the first memorable time was like 1999. My dad wanted to take one more big family trip before I went to high school, where I guess he thought I would like abandon the family. And then we started taking annual trips to Disney, and it was just, there was so much to do and so much fun that it was always just like a positive experience for me. And then when we got older, my parents would be like, "Hey, go, this is a safe place, go off and do your own thing. Yeah, we're gonna get massages or whatever." And I just thought that was so great, and there's so much to do, and every time we went there was something new to discover. And then my brother, and then I graduated from college, and my brother got a job in the Disney college program because he loves it even more than I do. But we also, I'll say we also love the story of Walt Disney. Like Walt Disney is like great, work hard, do the things, again, a visionary, like we won't see for a long time, I think. And so when I had disposable income and my brother was working there and I was working remote, I would just go to visit him in Florida sometimes, and we would go to the parks, and if I had to work, I would work in one of the areas there, and it was
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, cafe. Just hang out. One time I worked in there's like this, if you have like a Chase credit card, there's like this Chase lounge, and I went there and I was overlooking Spaceship Earth, which is the big golf ball at Epcot. Epcot is my favorite park. Spaceship Earth is my favorite ride. Well, Haunted Mansion is my favorite ride, but Spaceship Earth is my favorite ride at Epcot because it's like a ride all about communication. Amazing. Anyway, and so that was just like from a young age through adulthood, it was always such a positive impact for me. I've like ran half marathons at Disney World, which is, well, run is generous. I participated in half marathons.
Hey, you ran that half marathon.
I ran as best as I could. I completed half marathons.
There you go. I can't say that.
So it's, I mean, people say if I can do it, you can do it, but really if I can do it, you can do it. I'm like, my right leg is like shorter than my left leg, and like I'm a husky guy. I'm not built to run. And so it's just always been, and now my kids love it, of course, too. And we were going to go in March of 2020 before my son came along. That fell through. And so now we'll probably wait until number 3 is around 6 months or so, I think is what we're thinking.
Before you make the trip. And it's always, you mentioned our friend Walt Disney. It's frequently a lesson, I think, in most business schools, what he imagined and what he ultimately created and lives on today. I guess his children and grandchildren are fighting among many different topics and things, but content is something that they got right. They did a thing or two right with Disney. Though they are Disney, the global monster that they are, and I say monster not in a negative way.
Yeah. They're like Sully.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Sully from Monsters Inc., right? Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, I thought you meant Scully, who like flew the plane over.
Oh no.
Whoa.
Not the same. All right.
Not the same.
That was fun to watch.
That movie may have been sponsored partially by Disney, but what can small business owners and freelancers learn from the Disney way of creating content? And, when I say branding Disney, that seems like such a mountain of an idea, but Walt Disney didn't start where the company is now. So what can the small business owners take away from what they've done and built?
Yeah, what a great question. And I will pick this lesson from the pantheon of Walt Disney lessons. Walt Disney insisted that all of their animations from a certain time on, especially all of their movies, were done in color. And he got pushback from other people saying, no one has color TVs. This technology isn't around yet. And Walt understood that there would be that technology. And if they didn't do it now, then they'd have to go back and redo it or be, behind the times. And so Walt was very forward thinking there. But the lesson that I would want people to take is, if you are going to do something, do it well. Mm-hmm. So no matter what content you're creating, right? I've heard people go, oh, I just like kind of record the Zoom call and then upload it. And I'm like, all right, well, that's not a lot of effort. And your listeners will be able to tell. My worst performing YouTube videos are the ones I just recorded real quick because I felt like I needed to publish something. And that's another thing. They'll say the YouTube favors the algorithm and consistency, but viewers favor quality. So if you need to skip that Tuesday that you usually publish and put it out Wednesday or Thursday because it'll ultimately be better, take the extra time and do it right. Like my boss, Mr. Rizzi, would always say, do it once, do it right. So
Mr. Rizzi, my artistic partner, he is an animator, and he's no longer with Disney, but he was with Disney at one point. And one of our favorite bars in LA was the Snow White Cafe. And he would sit there and, they had the characters painted on the wall, and he'd be sitting back with like a stein of beer and just like looking at he's a very meticulous man, Sam. And he would just stare at the images and go, they're not right. They're not, and calling out all of that was wrong with the renderings and that's not to say, listen to it. But, and he's we've worked together on a lot of different projects, and he can be maddeningly meticulous. But the quality of his work, I mean, he's done like the Princess and the Frog and Rapunzel, and he just won. They just won an Oscar for Hair Love. That was probably 2 years ago before the pandemic. Like the work, like you said, it pays off. And he's done his own projects before, and I'm like, Sam, let's do this, let's do that, and but it takes time. And so having that patience to say, no, we're going to wait till this job is right. But in the end, I mean, look, Disney is what it is because they waited until they had everything right.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Princess and the Frog, I just saw it for the first time recently because my daughter watched it. So good.
Beautiful.
So
good. You know what? How old is your daughter again? If you mind sharing.
She's 4.
She's 4.
She's 4.
Let's talk, and I'll have Sam send her something. He does it all the time for my nieces and nephews all the time. He'll send them drawings and things like that. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So
I was gonna do like a counterpoint, but no, I'm not.
You should do the counterpoint.
Just so we can get both sides of the coin as well in our industry as well. Like I do understand that attention to detail is very important. Putting effort into your work. Yeah, no one wants a half-assed job. That's not what we're here for. But on top of all of that, I I also want to make note of that. We're not talking here about like getting analysis paralysis from getting over and over and trying to finish like, oh, it's never going to be done. We're not doing Disney films here. Done is better than perfect. And in most of our cases for what we put out. And I'm not saying, I don't think anyone that none of us here ship things that are half-assed, but I do think that done is better than perfect sometimes. And just to your point of benefiting the algorithm in this world of algorithms and all these, who are we really making content for? Like, I think it's really important to ask yourself that question. Like, who are you making content for? Are you making content for an algorithm that's going to possibly show this to someone on the offhand that person will become your client? You got to be a little bit more strategic than that. We also are making content for people who will convert, hopefully.
I want to stress that. I want to stress that because I just wrapped up a 5-week program, a 5-week boot camp called Beyond 8 to teach podcasters how to get to the 8th episode, right? Because most podcasts stop after 7. And I said that repeatedly, right? So it's maybe it sounds like conflicting messages. Done is better than perfect, but done also doesn't mean half-assed, right? So you can put the effort in, give yourself a deadline, do the best job you can, and put out that content. Maybe it's not going to be as perfect as you originally thought it would be, but put it out there, right? And so I think
I'm giggling.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean I was just gonna say, it's get it out there. Some of the videos that and also like we're our own worst enemy, right? Because sometimes I'll put out a video and I was like, this was trash, and it kills. So I think put in an honest effort and put it out there. But don't just say I'm going to throw something together real quick. That has never worked out for me.
There's so many people in this world. You'll reach someone with your best efforts, whatever that is. And I'm giggling here, agreeing with you both, because I'm thinking of the number of times I've walked off a stage evaluating my performance saying that just was awful because of XYZ. And then you go out, you take your costume off, you're just ready to get into your car, and someone's waiting in the lobby with tears in their eyes going, I love this performance. That meant so much to me. I'll never forget it for XYZ. And it's like, do your best and let the audience interpret the value and what they're taking from it. So, man, this has been an awesome conversation. We might have to let's just go ahead and agree. We will do a part 2 of this. And before we wrap up, do you want to, because at GoWP, we're all about creating happiness. Do you want to share with us how you're creating happiness for yourself this week, or something that is creating happiness for you? Joe Casabona?
Something that is creating happiness for me. This week, it's going to sound like a weird answer maybe, but the marketing committee that I went to yesterday, and it's just, I'm excited because I guess it's because my parents were involved in the things we did. And so I'm happy and excited to be joining a new community, expanding my network, and contributing to my daughter's school in the best way that I know how.
That's such a cool way to show up for your kid too. It's sure, it may not you just got to show up. You're doing a great job.
My dad was at every single baseball game, every drama club performance, every soccer game. Like he made sure that I could see him, and he had 4 kids, 4 boys. All around this, all within 6 years of each other. So he must have paid the scheduler to make sure that we played on adjacent fields all the time.
Back again, Mr. Casabona. Yeah, Joe. Yeah, Louie. Back again. Seeing Joe this
Yeah, Louie. Come on. Let's go. I'll put my lawn chair in between these 2 fields, put my kids there.
Awesome. This has been an awesome conversation, Mr. Joe Casabona. So thank you for being our guest today.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for letting me talk for way too long.
No, this is great.
And thank you for allowing me to do all those counterpoints and having just being such a great conversationalist. Thank you to everyone who listened or watched this on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can get this and other episodes of the GoWP Digital Agency podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And as a quick reminder, at GoWP, we want to help you become more profitable, whether it's listening to our podcast or joining in our weekly happiness hours, viewing informative webinars hosted by our friends like Joe Casabona, for example. He has a really great webinar on full site editing in the WordPress community. And of course, by growing your team with our super skilled developers, copywriters, designers, go to gowp.com to read more about our services and to schedule a discovery call. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Joe.